If grief was a person, how would you describe them?
When I lost my brother, the fire reached the entire household. Can't believe that I was the person made it out of that hell. And then I see a video of a young Ghazan boy, and he said his dream was to see his brother again.
Who's the most important person in your life today?
Who's yours?
You can flip it.
Well, come on. I've never asked you a question this entire time. I'm just curious.
If you were in a room, Mustafa, with everyone that you've lost, who's the first one you'd look for?
I think she'd be the first person I would draw towards. And I would ask her how to speak to my father.
What is important that he knows that his son thinks of him?
Between my father's hands, I re-entered the world.
So we just finished, me and Mustafa, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. But we finished one of my longest interviews. I love that there was no time limit. So I know the number is scary, but I'm pretty sure the journey, you'll understand why. If he was boring, I would have cut it up and reduced my questions. But I personally really enjoyed it, Mustafa.
I also really enjoyed it, you know.
I hope you got the chance to feel like you can express yourself.
No, Allah, you asked me questions that I'm really glad you asked, because I'm going to contemplate that back and forth for the days to come, for sure.
So always, we appreciate your support, your subscription, your enjoyment of this show. Our duty is to get you good human stories, great ones. So thank you for the support. And for all of you who don't know Mustafa, I hope I gave you the chance to know at least 11% of him. And for the ones who know him, I'm sure you're going to enjoy knowing him more. Support him, support his music, his message, his authenticity, and his contradictions.
Yeah.
Enjoy. أهلا.
أهلا وسهلا.
Today we want Mustafa, pure Mustafa.
I got you.
Hello. First question. How are you really doing?
It's a big question for the first question. I'm good. I'm good. I'm just keeping my eyes on the horizon, you know? Trying not to think of any of the weight that I'm carrying, and just thinking of what's ahead of me.
What is good? Because you said good. What does good mean to you?
I mean, alhamdulillah, you know, like my life is good. The family that I still have is good. My relationship with God is good. I think that is the thing that always helps me answer that question, you know? If my relationship with prayer is good, then I believe that I'm good. And if my relationship with prayer is faltering, then I believe that I'm faltering. And if it's non-existent, then I feel like I'm depleted. But that is actually how I answer the question. And if I could return to that space and be in sujood and have my forehead on the ground and be able to contextualize all of my suffering and all of, you know, kind of the barriers before me, then I know that I'm at a balance, actually.
Okay, if we had Mustafa, a white canvas, completely empty, and I asked you to draw your current mental state, what would you draw?
I hope I answer this well. All right. there's an open field.
Mm.
There are sunflowers, and the sunflowers are moaning into the field, because that's what sunflowers do traditionally. You know the reason that sunflowers moan into the field? You know, I was learning about this recently, that a row of sunflowers will moan into the field so that the sunflowers behind them can get the nutrients that they need. And then once those sunflowers get the nutrients that they need, they'll also moan into the field so the sunflowers behind them can get the nutrients that they need. And then in that way, it's impossible to understand jealousy, because if everyone was in consideration of everyone else, then we'd have a field full of sun, you know? Yeah, so I think if I think about the canvas, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about now just like an open field and a clear, giving sun, and these sunflowers moaning into the field. Maybe, you know, if we look towards the horizon, there's like a sun, there's a water, there's a sea, and it's begging us closer. And you think about the sea, as large as it is, it's begging us closer. You know what I mean? It's always asking, it's reaching out for us. And you always think about how the largest thing on earth is reaching out for us, and we don't reach out to each other enough, you know. And it feels a little cliche, but then there are like primary examples. And I always think about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's left the world to us as an example, you know. And when humans fail, you know, the world will be our example. So that's the way to answer your question. I answered it in many words and many poems that aren't even mine. So there you go.
But you answered it in a beautiful way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's a big question.
Yeah,
I thought you were about to ask me like where I was from, you know, to start it off, but you went straight for the jugular.
You said something in your answer. You said that you're not usually the nature guy, but you're very inspired by it, and you're still trying to translate that into your daily normal life, right?
Of course.
But you answered it in a way that you're kind of upset that it's not translating fully. But in my opinion, you are translating it the right way. I'll give you a very basic example. If you are in a classroom where you're the only one who doesn't work out, and everybody has an active lifestyle, maybe for the first month, you're like, I don't know if I should work out. Everybody's like, wake up with us, we're going to go jogging, or eat better, or sleep better, or do ice bath, or do sauna.
Yeah.
Maybe for 2-3 months, you'll only try like once. Then the next month, maybe you start to eat a bit better. Maybe the month after, you start to go jogging with them in the morning. So this transition of the guy who never used to be active to becoming an active one is an extremely organic.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you are. It will never quickly translate. I think that's weird. I think it has to organically translate.
For sure. Yeah. I can't start in the middle of the forest, you know? Yeah. I got to work my way into it. It's funny, what you're saying is also reminding me of something I learned recently, which is really important. And it's around intentionality, and how sometimes we're in a space, and I find that especially in like our shared communities, people are always interrogating people's intentions. They're always like, you know, why is this person here? Or why is this person supporting this said cause? And is this person being sincere? Or does this person have like secondary intentions or motives? And, you know, the way that we are, you know, kind of crucifying each other is not, I think, a thing that is beneficial to us. And I learned hadith recently that helped me understand a counter to that I thought was really beautiful, and it's related to what you're saying. And it was like, you know, the angels, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angels to go and forgive a people that are speaking about Him and learning about Him. And the angels go there and they see people in that congregation that are not there to learn. They're just in the company of those people. And they don't have the intention of learning in the way that those people have the intention of learning. And so the angels report back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they tell Him this. And He says, forgive them as well. Engulf them also in this mercy. You know, that they are receiving the collateral of that mercy just by being in the company of those people. And I think it's just so important to be at the center of a people that you feel are pure, you feel are inching towards goodness. And I think you get the collateral of that goodness a lot of times as well, you know? And I try to remember that because sometimes I feel I don't belong in particular spaces, but I know that if like I inch towards those spaces enough, or I stay in that space enough, it's going to become, I will become that, you know, as a result, you know? So yeah, it's, so hopefully I become the workout guy, you know, around the workout people.
Okay, so who are you, Mustafa?
Mustafa Ahmed Azzuddin. You know, I'm from, who am I? My name is Mustafa Ahmed Azzuddin. I'm a Sudani Muslim. I was born and raised in the largest housing project in North America, where over 70 languages were spoken. So much of what I am is a result of the clash of identity. 3 seconds to my left was the local church. In front of me was the elementary school that I went to. In front of that elementary school was the masjid that my father began in 1995. And to the right of that masjid was the butcher, the halal butcher where I used to get all my meat, and everything, my entire universe, it unfolded, you know, just breaths away from me. And so the moment that I would step outside, I was met with the entire world that I knew. And sometimes people have to hike to that world, or they have to, but there was no hiking that happened for me. There was no journey I had to take. Everything that I was and everything that I knew was arm's reach away. And I think I was constantly reminded of all of what I was, because, you know, it was like, you know, it felt like I was, you know, my family was below this tree, you know what I mean? And all we needed to do was look up and see everything that made us, you know. It was really beautiful. And I think, I guess that's just what I am. When I think about myself, whenever someone asks me that question, who are you? I always think about how I want to be remembered when I die, you know. And I guess I just want to be remembered as a believer, you know. I want to be remembered as a person that attempted to believe, you know, and that tried to return to his belief. Because I do believe that the true believer is the one that is like always returning to their belief. Even when it's wavering, you return. When it's being questioned, you return. When you're hesitating with your belief, you return to it. And that's what I want to be remembered as, you know, at least by the people that know me and love me, you know.
Why did your name start as Mustafa the Poet?
I was 13 years old, and you know, when you're that young and you want to be something, the only way to be it is to say that you are it. And so when I was 13, I was looking for Instagram names, and Mustafa Ahmed was taken because it's obviously one of the most common names on the planet Earth. And it also happens to be the name of a terrorist, which is why I always get thrown into secondary customs on my way to America or Canada. It's not a very lucky name, you know, but it's beautiful, and I love the name. It took me a long time to wear it and to feel like it was mine. But the moment that I did, I couldn't see myself outside of it. And so I thought Mustafa the Poet so people could believe that I was a poet. And I guess you don't realize the dent that an Instagram name could have on your identity when you're that young, because you think it's just a social page where you're gathering your friends, and then all of a sudden it becomes the way that the world interacts with you. And you know, poetry is not such a global medium in the way that other arts are. So when I began as a poet, I didn't think that people beyond the 3 communities that I knew would be aware of me or aware of my work. And so even when I chose the name, I thought that it wouldn't go beyond the borders of Toronto. So when it did, and when I walked through different cities and I see people refer to me as Mustafa the Poet, I laugh. I laugh at my 13-year-old self who was trying to become something that he didn't believe was his entirely, you know? It's almost like I have imposter syndrome built into my artist name. It's hilarious.
You still use it?
I don't use it, but I'm not averse to it. So like, I'm not going to,
fight it.
Yeah, I won't defend, or like I won't attack someone who wants to call me that, because that's, I don't mind if people can call me anything, bro. Call me Ahmed, Mohammed, Abdullahi, it doesn't even matter. I'll take any name, honestly.
Okay, describe for me, Mustafa, your childhood in 3 words.
Oh, God. You know what? I can answer this a lot of ways. I can really answer this a lot of ways. If I'm describing my childhood in 3 words. I guess the first word that comes to me is stolen, endless, and God. Those are the 3 words that come to me now. If I'm going to describe my childhood, those are the 3 words. Stolen, endless, God. Yeah. Yeah.
Why stolen?
I feel like so much of my youth was robbed of me, because of what I had to experience from a really tender age. There were too many funerals. There was too much isolation there, and then having to understand these grieving hierarchies when I was 10 years old about who gets permission to grieve someone who is not allowed to grieve. It's like there was so much happening and not enough of it was the freedom that I identified in other people's childhoods, And luckily for me, the hood I grew up in was so large that I found it to be normal. But there are periods where you step outside of the only world you know and you see people having access to a warmth that you don't even recognize. And then you return and everything that you know becomes abstract again. So yeah, I feel like a lot of the joys and a lot of the levity of being a young person I've had to find later in my life. And so when I think stolen, when I think childhood, I think stolen. I feel that, I really do,
And endless is the first time I hear that.
Endless because it felt like everything that surrounded me was eternal, like the world that I was in, even the way that like necro-political environments are designed, they're not designed for you to leave, There are neighborhoods that are designed for you to stay in. That's just the way that socio-political, decisions are made, Some poor people are made to die or made to stay in one neighborhood forever. And sometimes the death is not bodily death. Like sometimes it is just like the death of their dreaming or the death of their growth. And some people are meant to stay, and if they were to grow, it would, obstruct a balance. And I could feel that in my community. I could feel what was fed to the people in my community. I could feel people who were in this kind of, cycle. It was like, they couldn't exit it, It was like, that kind of redundance. It was a life sentence, even for the ones that were still in the neighborhood. A lot of it felt like an open air prison. And then there was the beauties of it that also felt endless, that once someone survives a violence and they still have maintained their joy, that joy is infinite. Who can take that joy away from someone if they've experienced a world of pain and they've still maintained it? So I look at, some people who are smiling or laughing despite the hell that they've endured. And I think that is an infinite joy that they have. No one can take that from them, And when I think about the neighborhood I lived in, I think, well, no one can take this neighborhood away from us because it's all we have. And and when I think about like the memories of my father and my mother, the ones they brought home from Sudan, I look up at the walls and I see all this antique furniture and like these images, like everything, it's aching, it's like, it's begging to be recalled. And I think for them, they needed to fill the household with all this memorabilia so that they can return. And I think in the household was a kind of endless return to a place that they had to abandon. So yeah, like there's something about the neighborhood that felt like such a large universe. And no matter how much of it I unveiled, there was just so much more. I remember I used to have this dream, and it was a reoccurring dream. And I would be sitting in a field and I would be unwrapping. There would be this white veil and I'd be unwrapping an item. I don't know what it was. There was something solid that was like, that the veil was wrapping. But no matter how many times I like, I kind of, no matter how many times I unveiled it, it was never revealed, There was so much cloth and the cloth was endless. And I never got to the crux of it, I never, until now, I still don't know what was at the center of all that cloth and all that white. And I just never understood it. And I tried to go to some sort of dream interpretation so that I could understand it. But I guess it was just not for me to understand. And I guess I grew older and I realized that it was a metaphor for something much larger than myself, that no matter how much I tried to get to the genesis of some of my suffering, I was never going to get there, and maybe I'm not going to get there in this lifetime, and that all of it is cloth and that there's actually nothing at the center. And by the time I get there, maybe death is the thing that will enlighten me and help me understand why. Because, sometimes I just don't understand why, and I think that question has buried me a lot of times. And I guess the last one is, I guess, quite simple. It's like, that God is the only way I understood it. Like I grew up going to the masjid from when I was 4 or 5 years old. And it's a strange thing because, when I was young, I used to take the thobe and I used to tuck it into my pants so I could look like I'm wearing like a white dress shirt and jeans. So I'd go to the masjid. And my dad, when I used to come home, he used to look at it and he used to analyze the jalabiya and go, the mukarfis? Because he'd know exactly what I did with it. And I'd be like, no, I was wearing it out. And it's because I was afraid that the non-Muslim kids would see me in the jalabiya and they would laugh at me. And it's funny because I grew older and now I choose to wear the jalabiya when I'm on stage. And now the people that critique me for it are the Muslims themselves, and the non-Muslims don't care anymore. And it's hilarious that like I've, like kind of the discomfort around the way that I present myself as a Sudani person, as a Muslim person, as you know, as a person of like, you know, many diasporas, you know, it just moves, you know, that discomfort just moves, you know, it doesn't disappear, but things just shift, you know, they find new forms, they find new homes to live in. You know, someone dies and it flees and enters another person's body.
What is one thing you learned from each of your parents?
There's something that my father taught me. It's a story he used to tell me all the time, and I know it's probably a story we've heard a million times. I imagine that a lot of Arabic parents understand the story, but maybe you don't. Maybe it's not as common a story as I imagine. But I'd come home from failing to integrate into a community that I wanted to integrate into, or, you know, a small performance where I tried to share poetry and I didn't feel that it resonated. And I think from a young age, I wanted to be loved, you know, because that is, I think, what we want on this earth anyway, is to feel loved on this earth, to feel seen, you know, to feel witnessed. Because if you're not witnessed, like I don't know if you ever lived, you know, someone has to witness you. And one thing my father always told me was that, you know, don't worry, because if the angels love you, the angels, if God loves you, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, He will tell the angels to love you. And if the angels love you, the angels will tell all the people to love you. And all you need to focus on is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that love will find its way to the people that matter. And that was a thing that I tried to remember, that if I was going to leave a room to pray, I remembered that I was consulting the custodian. I was consulting the person that I was at the helm of all loving. And I didn't need to focus on a conversation, that the arrival of that conversation or an idea that I had wasn't going to result in any love in the way that discourse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to result in love. And the story my father used to tell me was a story about a donkey, a father and a son. And he would tell me it in full every single time, although I knew the story. And he'd be like, no. If this is what you're going through, I'm going to tell you the story again in its completion. And it's a father, a son, and a donkey walk by a village. And the father is on the donkey and the son is walking. And the village people say, look at this father. Has he no care for his young son, his fragile son who is walking the street while he is the one that seeks the comfort on this donkey? Does he not love his son? Would he not want his son to be on this donkey? And then they walk by the village again, but this time the son is on the donkey. And the village people say, this son has no respect for his father. He has no respect for his elders. How is it possible for him to be on this donkey and watch his father walking? The people have lost their ethics, you know, the people are gone. And then this time they're both on the donkey and they walk by the village, and the village people say, this poor donkey, they have put all the weight of the world on this donkey. Do they not care about how the donkey feels as they journey from this village to another? People have no care. This is animal cruelty. And then finally they walk by the village and both of them are off the donkey. And the village people say, these are stupid people. They have access to this donkey and none of them are using it for transportation. What's the point? And my father used to tell me this over and over and over again until it settled into my heart. And I had to know that there was going to be no satisfaction from all people, that no matter how much I tried to hold the world around me, there was going to be another world interrogating me and wondering why I'm not holding them as well. And we just don't have enough of a grasp to capture all of people's suffering or all of people's loneliness or all of people's desire. And I find that time and time and time again, you know. And from my mother has taught me so much. My mother has taught me so much. It's so difficult to choose one thing that she taught me. I have to choose the right thing. I have to represent her well because I gave my father a whole story, you know?
Could be simple, but deep.
I mean, it's a thing that I say all the time. I'm going to say 3 things, and they're all very short. She says 3 things to me all the time. She says that to me all the time. That your connection to your family will stretch your life, prolong your life. And I never understood it when I was really young. But as I grow older, I understand that the more that I lean into my blood, and I lean into my family, and I lean into who I am, I'm leaning into the mirror. I'm leaning into the well. I'm leaning into an infinity pool. And of course, I'm going to expand as a result. Of course, I'm going to have more life as a result. Of course, I'm going to have more light as a result of that. Of course, my connection to my Lord and to my dreaming and to my history and to my future is going to be made more fertile as a result of that. But when I was younger, I said, I'll be rewarded with more life. But no, there's actually like a science to that, you know. There is, you know, there is true logic, you know, and magic and beauty and worldly values in maintaining your connection to your family. And so that is a thing that has been so important to me. And what I realize is I've even extended it to chosen family. That if you find family in this life, you near your connection to them, you hold on to the rope, and you make sure that they're holding on to the rope as well, and you make sure you're holding each other accountable to this thread that is not, of course, made possible by blood, but made possible by choice. And I think that also stretches your life. You know, and I'm so happy that she told me that constantly, because it's been a thing that I seek refuge in now. Second thing she says all the time to me is نظافة من الإيمان. You know, that cleanliness is of the faith. And it's a simple thing. When you wake up in the morning and you do your bed and you clean your room or you wash your face, there's something about that clarity that helps you re-enter your day. You know, if it feels like you don't have a doorway into a joy or a doorway into, a possibility or into a hope, there's something about cleaning yourself, cleansing yourself, even cleansing yourself of language or cleansing yourself of kind of the clutter of, of attention between yourself and someone that you love. That I also consider a cleaning, that would, like, you're refurbishing a relationship. That refurbishing feels like taking a shower, that you have a conversation with someone and you try to get to the root of an issue. And once you get to that root and you're able to diminish it, now you feel like you've cleaned yourself. And I think that I consider that all the time, that that's of the faith. And that's the only way to raise your faith, to expand your faith. نظافة من الإيمان. Cleanliness is of the faith. She said that to me often. And it's a thing that if it was halal for me to get a tattoo, I think that's what I would get, right here. So, that next to and the third thing she told me so often was Tim Jamilak, which I adore, and I think it's so important, which is complete your beauty. That if you begin a deed, complete the deed. And I thought about it, and it's like a thing that would hover around me. It would orbit as I was halfway through a deed. If I was walking somebody home, I would think to myself, I can't walk them halfway. I have to make sure that they reach their doorstep, you know? Or if I'm having a conversation with someone who is spiraling or, you know, in a depressive state, I have to make sure that we arrive somewhere. You know, I can't cut that conversation short. That's so much about beauty, and so much of the deed is about the completion of it. And I think a lot of beauty that is undone is a beauty that's left dangling in the air. It's left above you, and you have to carry that with you. And so anytime I would do something without ghusur, you know, without like a passion, without true sincerity, she would say, you're not doing this with true passion. There's no ghusur in your prayer. You know what I mean? When you pray with sincerity, pray with a passion. And it would make me think about my recitation, my enunciation, my conversation with God, an email that I sent, a song that I write. You know, even when I go into the studio, it doesn't even matter if I'm writing an email or if I'm writing a text or if I'm writing a poem. I think to myself, if I'm going to engage with this beauty, I have to complete this beauty. And because of that, even when I'm writing with another artist, I don't go to the studio and write for fun. I'm not a person that writes poetry passively. To me, it has a devotional quality. And I think that devotional quality comes from my mother's lesson, that if I'm going to channel something, I'm going to channel it and I'm going to complete it. And I'm only coming to this realization right now. I want you to know that. A lot of my friends, I work with a lot of artists. Like, you know, I'm a songwriter before anything. And everyone knows that I hate a demo. I hate a song that is unfinished. I don't like to exit the studio with a song that is half-baked, or a song that doesn't know what it is or who it is. A song that has no direction. Because then it's like, we're just like, it's all of the, you know, it's just a collage of different beauties that is not saying anything. And I always try to at least understand the song before leaving the studio. And a lot of my friends know that I won't engage with the song unless I can arrive at some sort of understanding of the song, that I want to have like a mutual understanding with what was created. And I think that comes from what my mom taught me, you know? Tim Jamila, like little did she know it was going to help me write songs. Like, that's probably not what she wanted, but you know, that's where it got to. So yeah, thanks for asking me that. Honestly, I'd never recalled that. I've never been asked that before, and I'm very glad I did, because it really took me back to a lot of beauties that I tend to forget, you
know. What is something people are surprised to learn about you?
Sometimes when you grow up in a violence, the only way to survive it is to reflect it. And sometimes, even if you don't want to reflect that violence, the world has already projected that violence onto you. Because everything around you is echoing that violence and echoing that war. And the only thing you can do is become what is being echoed. There's only so much you could scream into a void before realizing what's coming back is a contradiction, you know? And I think that was my experience. The friends of mine who were murdered, wallahi, they were some of the most tender people that I knew. The friends of mine who are doing life in prison are some of the most considerate and soft people that I know. But I just know that when we were young, you know, I always think about fitra, you know, someone's fitra, like their essence. It's what they are, it's who they are. You know, it's not a thing that you could avoid. And I remember being 8, 9 years old among some of my friends who are gone now. And they were the first people to cry. And they were the first people to mirror a sorrow that they would see in a classroom. And when you see those things, those are indicators of someone who is holding so much feeling and so much sorrow and so much, fragility. And when you live in a neighborhood like mine, it's no match. Like, we are no match for the kind of cold that we were met with, that kind of softness and that kind of openness. It's not a thing that survives well in a neighborhood like mine. But the cruelest people that I know, the people that had true cruelty, they are still living now. The people that would not give in, that abandoned their hearts because they realized that the system that surrounded them had no heart in it. So why on earth would they utilize a thing against a thing that was devoid of any feeling or any recognition of who they were? Those people, that whether they did that intentionally or otherwise, I think they were a match for that cold. They became that cold and they were a match for it and they survived it, And so, when I landed in Toronto and I was talking to a customs officer and they were like, you have you had a gun charge? You had an assault with a weapon charge? And this woman beside me could not believe it. She looked at me and it was almost as if I was lying to her about who I was the entire time, about every book that I read, about every choice in conversation, about every breathing technique that I have before I perform. But we had a conversation afterwards, and it was not a thing that she was able to understand completely, but it was, I guess, a thing that she tried to sympathize with, but even that sympathy is impossible, sometimes. So I think that's a thing that people, I think, become shocked by more than not.
You said earlier, Mustafa, you said sometimes the system is designed to keep you in this cycle. You broke out of this cycle. How come you were able to break this cycle on you?
I was able to break the cycle because, sometimes I don't know why, And I do have, of course, I've been talking about this for years, but there is a survival's remorse that I feel, that sometimes I look around me and I can't believe that I was the person that made it out of that hell. But I had older sisters. Where my parents were blind, my sisters were present. And I think so many of my friends lost their lives in the blind spot. And those blind spots, they're inevitable, because a lot of our parents are coming from a war that they didn't get an opportunity to process. And then they were thrown into a new war that was so abstract. And as they're tussling between both of those grievances, there is a world that they are not exposed to, that they don't understand, that they cannot see. And so a lot of their children slip right before them. They never see the bullet coming. They don't understand how it entered their son's body. They don't know where it came from. They don't know what their son could have done to plant the kind of rage that would result in their death. And it's hard, to think about predestination. I think about it so much time, qadar Allah. Qadar Allah, I think, is most difficult to surrender to when someone is stolen from you. But still, that's how I'm here. I'm here because of the women in my life. And if it wasn't for the women in my life, I would not be here. There are so many exits. Like, if I think about the amount of times that I could have been gone, that is actually all the fuel that I need to keep moving forward. You know, sometimes I'm in a social gathering, my friend would look at me and be like, how do you do it? Like, you don't get any social anxiety being around all these people? And I looked at him and I'm like, brother, I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm not even supposed to be here. Like, you know, how many opportunities people had to take me from this earth. You know how often I grazed a conversation with the angel of death. So many times, you know? That's really what it was, you know? It's like, and every single time my life was threatened or my world was threatened, the world beyond me grew larger. Every single time, you know? It's like, I remember at my brother's funeral, I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to give my life to avenging him. I really did. And it's because the system is not designed to avenge my brother. You know, the system is not designed to find my brother's killer. And I know that that responsibility falls on the community. And I thought little about my responsibility to my family, and all I could think about was my responsibility to my brother. And it's funny, I laughed thinking about all of the wisdom that I tried to impart on the other young brothers in the community who lost their brothers. And I would tell them, wallahi, if you avenge your brother, it does no good for him in the grave. It does no good for him on the day of judgment. It does no good for your family. It does no good for yourself. There is no healing related to that vengeance. And I would repeat these mantras. I would repeat these things as fact, these flags in the ground, and I would be unwavering in my communication of those things. And then when my brother passed, I believed none of it. I believed in none of it. I believed none of it. It didn't matter to me. It didn't matter to me that it wouldn't benefit my brother, because in my mind it would. And I know that it's like, you know, that vengeance wouldn't cure me of this thing that I wake up with and that I sleep with. But I needed to find out for myself. And then when that rage dissipated after a few months, I seen the world ahead of me. And it was so much more vast than I ever seen it before. I seen all that. I see my family. And I looked into the eyes of my mother and my father and my siblings and my one little brother that I have left. And I thought to myself, I lost my one older brother. And I have to be for my little brother what my older brother couldn't be for me. And so my relationship with him, it became a forest where at once it was just, you know, a park bench. So much of my world opened up and became possible after. And in that way, I guess, no one I lost in vain. So yeah, I think, you know, it's so funny, you know, you ask a big question there, because I still don't know why, you know, I don't know why I'm the person that is here. I think about that, you know, we were talking about this earlier, like when I think about, you know, even just being a person in the industries that I'm in, I didn't want to be an artist. I was very comfortable being a songwriter. I was very comfortable helping people craft records and stories that they would send into the world. And then when I decided that there were stories, there were tender folk stories on mourning, on the hood, that no one was going to tell, that only I could tell, that is when I felt compelled to sing songs myself. But what I didn't realize was that when I began, that people would want me to represent them, or to have an expectation of an accurate representation of what they know of the faith and what they know of my culture and what they know of my dress. And that is what happens with shared identity. People don't know how to compartmentalize faith or compartmentalize culture. And I always laugh because, you know, culture is a made-up thing, you know? It's a thing that should be honored, but it is entirely made up, you know? A few hundred years ago, in the village that my father grew up in Ito, someone made a decision to engage in a certain chant, and that chant was repeated. And if you have enough witnesses, that becomes a cultural cornerstone. And it becomes repeated and repeated and repeated until the world is built. And I represent my culture, my Sudani culture, in a fragmented way, in a way that is undone, in a way that is incomplete. And that is a sincere account of how it appears in my life. Because I do feel distance from my culture. I do feel an entire world between me and the world that my father grew up in. And so when it appears in a fragmented way in my music, that is actually a mirror of how it is in my actual life. And I think it's a poor way of returning to yourself, but I think so many people reiterate their identity by attacking someone that they feel is far from it. And that's how they affect their ground or establish it. And I think that's fine. And I think whatever people need to do with what I present to get closer to themselves, I don't mind. I don't mind if that is what I need to be for them to feel like themselves, or for them to feel like more of themselves. Khalas, take it. Because I do feel entirely disconnected from the way that I present myself on the internet. And I'm not saying that I'm somebody else. I'm just saying that I do subscribe to the notion that social media is a thought space. That you're always interacting with people's ideas of themselves and never who they actually are. That if someone doesn't have a lived experience with me, their idea of me, the love that they have for me, even their resentments, those are all temporal. There's no permanence in it. True permanence comes with a lived experience. And I think those things can be overturned because they're only ideas. And yes, sometimes people have a tapestry of ideas that they try to, thread together to build a life. But that life is hollow. It's not enough to interact with. It's not enough to have a permanent resentment. And so when I see people interacting with this idea, I really do think that they're just interacting with the low parts of themselves. SubhanAllah, the funny thing is like when I see Muslims attacking other Muslims online, I always think the way they're attacking them is the way that kind of religious abuses exist in a household. The prayers that they utter against somebody else, like the Allah yakhrab baytak or this or that and third. It feels like it resembles the same language of the language of parents and uncles that would use God against their children. And of course, if you don't find a way to confront that and to forgive yourself and forgive the people who have cornered you with that, then you will just repeat it. And I really do see so many people online repeating the ailments of their fathers and repeating the ailments of their elders. That as much as they feel that they've isolated themselves from that hurt, I do think they embody it now. And, I always do my best to part from all of the shortcomings of the way that the faith and the culture was delivered to me. I'm sorry, I literally took way too long answering that question, but the questions are just...
But I don't have time limits.
Oh, amazing. Great. Well,
then as long as you're expressing yourself, and I think you have a very good talent of not losing track of the question asked. Like you can talk for 13 minutes, but still remember.
No, for sure. I that is something that I do know how to do.
A lot of people lose.
No.
Then they're like, what did you actually ask?
Yeah.
Now I'm enjoying this. You're extremely well spoken.
Thank you.
Your relationship between your mouth and your brain is a healthy one. You express well. You know, it's fluid. So I'm enjoying listening to you. What does success mean to you?
It's simple, man. Success is if Allah is pleased with me. It really is. It really is. And I know I make so many mistakes. And in this moment right now, I don't feel very close to God. But wallahi, I love God. And I love Allah. I do. And I think what carries me forward is that so many people that engage with me are people that feel far from God. And I think they could feel that I'm also trying to journey back to Him. And I feel that my audience or my friends, they walk with me. We're walking alongside each other. I'm not even leading the way because sometimes I don't know where I'm going. But I think we're walking alongside each other. And as long as you have certainty, that you have faith that you will arrive back at that surrender, then you'll be fine. And I have to believe that. And that is success for me. That is success for me. Because everything else is... everything else is banal. It really is, you know, everything else is so fictitious. And I know it doesn't last. It's the only thing that keeps me moving forward. It's my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my relationship with faith. And I want to reach that, you know, I want to reach that satisfaction. The beautiful thing is that I'll just never know, you know. A thing that I always think about is, you know, not to be the guy that's always mentioning a hadith, man. I hate to be this guy, you know, because you know, feel far from God. But I always think about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, he talks about his wife asks him, Aisha, she asks him, she goes, why do you repeat this dua so often? And dua is, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinak, like, oh, turner of the hearts, turn our hearts to the straight path. She questioned why he would repeat this dua so often when he is the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the messenger of God, he's the best person to walk the planet. And he says, it's because the heart is between the two fingers of God and He can turn it in any direction. And it's so human and so beautiful that error can exist in any of us, that turning can exist in any of us, that disbelief, none of us are safe from that disbelief. So when I think about that, and I think about, you know, how my heart can turn away from God and return back to God, that is the thing that drives me closer. It drives me closer to think that no matter how many times I drift, there is a way back. I think about that and I try to make that prayer as often as possible myself, as supplication.
Would you see that religion and spirituality are the same or different?
For me, they're the same, you know, but I think that someone could be God conscious without particularly having a religion, you know. Rami and I actually have this ongoing joke where we look at someone and we see the way that they carry themselves and they walk into the room and the way they like peer into someone, you know, and the way they fall into a conversation and allow someone to fall into them. And we look at their utter belief in the good of the world and in the sky above them and in the ground beneath them when we think, he's Muslim. Even if they're not Muslim, we're like, this guy's Muslim, man. He doesn't know it yet, but he's Muslim. She's Muslim. For sure she's Muslim. And it's a funny thing, but it's a thing that like we believe that like, you know, we're just yeah, it's coming to them, you know? It's only a matter of time before they embrace the faith. Or this person is like, I looked at my friend, and my friend doesn't believe in God. He's an artist, incredible artist that I work with. And when he sings, I could feel something reverent in his singing, in his voice, in his conviction. And he says he doesn't believe in God. And I always say, nah, you believe in God. And he goes, no, Mustafa, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. And I know that he has these religious wounds, you know, these wounds from being in these religious structures that made him feel small and made him feel undone. And I try to cut through that and look at him and say, no, there is a belief that you have, and I could see it. I'm like, it's impossible. I'm like, I'm looking at you. I'm like, how could you tell me? So listen, my friend, and wallahi, I hope he sees this, and he will see this. You know, we were in the studio in the middle of America, and I looked at him and I said, how could you tell me that you don't believe in God? When earlier this month, I looked to God and I prayed to him and I said, bring me someone that I can have a conversation with regarding this one matter, you know, where I won't feel naked when having that conversation. I said, you were the person that came forward and had that conversation with me time and time and time again. I'm like, you were the one that pulled that conversation. You were the one that fished it out of my mouth. I said, how? I said, how when God brought you forward? I said, you're going to tell me you don't believe in God when God brought you to me? I said, I don't believe you. And he cried. And he told me the following time we see each other, he said, I think I do believe in God. He said, I just don't know how God appears in my life. He said, but I think I do. I just don't know how. And I said, it's okay. I said, I think I'm like one light at a time, you know? You go back and forth with light until it becomes the relationship that you could hold on to. I said, not everything at once, you know?
And I said it to you earlier when you wanted to bring that to your life. Said one light at a time in your words.
Yeah.
What's the most attractive thing for you in a person?
Ooh, good question. The most attractive thing to me in a person. It's remorse. That I think is the most attractive thing to me. I think there's something about remorse that says everything about a person and the way they carry themselves and the way they carry their relationships, you know, the relationships with other people, their relationships with the world around them, their relationships with their Lord. Remorse to me is an indication of mercy. And it's an indication of softness. It's an indication of love. And it's an indication of protection, you know, and self-actualization and accountability. You know, that when someone could feel a remorse, and I'm talking about a conscious remorse, you know, a remorse where someone, you know, they feel, and I don't mean guilt, because I think guilt is an entirely different thing. You know, I think that sometimes people have an unhealthy guilt that they carry on. But I think remorse is a beautiful thing when we're always wronging each other, you know. And every friendship and every relationship, I was reading about this, that every relationship is built on continued mercy and forgiveness, that without continued mercy, all relationships die. And I think that a person that is taking missteps with their relationship with God and missteps with their, you know, relationship with nature and the world around them, and inevitable missteps with their families and with their friends, the thing that is going to allow for them to return to those relationships in full, with a balance and with an understanding and with a truth, is remorse. And I think every relationship that I have that has, you know, a kind of like a built-in, you know, a remorse that comes at a portioned and intentional and precise period, you know, those are the ones that exist in their highest form always, you know, because nothing is left unsaid and nothing is left undone. Everything is seen, like everything is absorbed and processed through that remorse. And I think the more like remorse that I feel when I wrong someone that I love, the more remorse that I feel when I, you know, when I turn away from God or when I sin, the more remorse that I feel like for myself when I, you know, when I just don't reach the fullness of my potential, then I think I can sit with myself more, you know, I can have like a better relationship with my truth and with my dreaming. And a lot of times, if your relationship with your own dreaming and your own aspirations, if that becomes distorted, sometimes that's a thing that, you know, the people around you could feel, you know. But if like someone has a mercy on themselves, then you won't feel that because they feel that mercy. So I guess I say remorse, but the true word that I'm looking for is mercy. That's really what it is. If there is one quality, the greatest quality that I recognize in anyone every single time is mercy. Is mercy on themselves, mercy on the people that they love, and mercy with their own relationship with God and the world around them. Because without that mercy, everything is going to come apart. And they don't allow it to come apart because mercy makes sure that all those things are elastic, you know, that they won't diminish. And I think mercy it protects everything, you know. It defends everything as well. You know, like if you were not here and someone is speaking about something that you've done, so much of loving someone is, I think, about defending all of them. So much of wanting someone and really believing in someone is being able to defend all of the good of them. And the only way to be able to do that is to have a true mercy on them. That mercy allows for you to contextualize their suffering, to psychoanalyze something that they've done wrong and understand how they've arrived to it. Now, mercy doesn't absolve someone of responsibility. It's not to say that you could have mercy on someone and absolve them of responsibility. You could have mercy on someone while still holding them accountable. And that's the beauty of it. So I think if there's one quality that I would want in everyone that I love and that I would want to give to everyone that I love, it is that continued mercy and that back and forth of mercy. It just, you know, it carries on for lifetimes.
Do you want to get married?
Of course I want to get married. I want to get married. I just love the idea of officiating a love, completing half of your deen, being before someone. There's not enough opportunities to gather. And the amount of times that I've gathered with the people that I love, that I haven't seen in a long time, in a field surrounding an artifact that what felt like an artifact, but really it was someone's body being lowered into the ground. The amount of times that has been the mass gathering of people that I love is unfortunate and it's unprecedented. And I think now I'm trying to counter that by going to as many gatherings of love as possible. And I haven't been invited to enough weddings. And someone the other day said, man, you know so many people. How is that possible? The people that I know are unserious. They're not serious people. They don't want to officiate their love. They don't want to get married. And so I think I'm really excited. I'm really excited to just have a wedding. I just want to have a wedding. You know what I mean?
What does love mean to you, though?
Like that kind of love?
Yeah.
It's to have a witness. You know, that is love. You know, romance is to be witnessed by someone for the entirety of their life and to have the equal opportunity of being witnessed by them. And you belong more to the world as a result of that witness. And I think a lot of people that are alone, they become untethered. So easy to feel untethered from the world. It's so easy to be forgotten. You know, people don't realize that even when they hear about a conversation that happened at a protest in 1968, in the middle of America, they think that they know that conversation by word of mouth, and that is false. You know it because someone recorded it. Someone wrote it down. Someone said, I have to make sure that this conversation is remembered. And we overestimate memorabilia. We overestimate the kind of the permanence of documentation. And it's so easy to be forgotten. It's so easy for stories. It doesn't matter how important your story is. If someone doesn't write it down, if the right person doesn't write it down, it can slip beneath you. It can slip beneath the entire world. And of course, there's nothing more beautiful than being remembered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why the need to be remembered when God will remember you? But I think we also have a responsibility. I mean, another thing that my dad used to say, tie your camel, you know? Tie your camel. Tie the memory, or else it will leave when you go inside the house. And so I think getting married and having a lifetime of love with someone is allowing someone to hold the memory of you infinitely in this life and the next.
Can I get these two? Are you good?
Yeah.
And the other one. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Mustafa. We have different questions here and some like quotes from you.
Oh my God.
So I like getting your side of it. The first one I'm going to read out. This one hurt me because I have brothers. So I'll read what you wrote. I thought it expressed a lot, but I wanted to hear you. You said, 1 year ago today, I buried my big brother on my birthday. This year, I'd like to exchange your well wishes for your prayers. The only gift I'll accept is a donation in his name, a tree, a meal, another prayer. I think I hide it well, but every hour passes like a blade moving through my chest. How I failed to protect him. Not an hour passes without his memory falling over me, without the memory of sirens, red and blue fireworks that never reach the ground. His last words are unknown anthem. The screams of my family still lodge deeper into my heart than any song. His killer running and running, may he die every day until we find him. Amen. I've lost so many people since losing my brother. The bullets ricochet. To those of you who fought the tide and remained with me in the worst year of my life, may the angels take your names where I can't. Amen. If I'm no longer of service, dear Lord, free me from this life. Amen. 24 hours before my brother's death, I told him, there's nothing for us here. You have to leave Toronto. He replied, Inshallah, I will leave. And he did, though not in the way I imagined. I resent him for leaving. I resent all I didn't ask him. They left his body on that concrete until the sun fell. 12 hours, my mother laid next to him beyond yellow tape, her cliff. May those officers never know peace. Amen. To serve, may Allah have mercy on my Muhammad and allow him a safe passage to paradise. I was once a little brother. And I have brothers. And I can't imagine how it feels. what comes to mind when I read this? I don't know when was the last time you heard or read your own words.
Yeah, I mean, because there's everything and there's nothing, you know. I have all the words in the world and none of them are enough. And even hearing it back, I've never read that back. I just wrote it and I put it out into the world. And even in that note, I failed. Even in that message, I failed to depict the emptiness of my life since his passing. Even a year on, no matter how many times I think about it, no matter how many words I write, I'm no match for that loss. There was no death that prepared me for his death. And it's difficult to bring it to any conversation. It's like bringing a mountain to a living room. It's like not enough of it can fit. And every single time I speak about my brother, every single time the words leave my mouth, I grieve them because I know that they're not going to be held in the way that I need them to be held with the person that I'm speaking with. When I see people look away or shudder or blink or nod their head, there's no reaction that satisfies me. There are no amount of tears. There is no comparison. I used to make a prayer that my brother wasn't murdered. I just wanted him, that if he was going to die, I wanted him to die any other way. Because I seen the effect of murder on other families. And I didn't want my family to take that on. But when I lost close friends of mine, that was a death that I had to make do with alone in my bedroom. But when I lost my brother, the fire reached the entire household. And there's no part of that household that I could go to without feeling its heat. And I began to miss it. I began to miss when the grief was only my own. I began to miss seeing my mother walk into my room and not understand the gravity of what I was feeling. I hated so much that I could look at my parents and I could see in them what they only seen in me before. I could see in them what was completely abstract to them for so many years. SubhanAllah, you know. And I got offline. I got offline for good reason, because I remember when I was younger, 16, and I would post about my close friends who've passed. And SubhanAllah, like, people online would be so kind and they would send their condolences and they would try to console you and they would even, you know, perform this extended gratitude and remembrance. And a week on or 2 weeks on, they would send you another message and be like, we're still thinking about you. I hope Mustafa is doing fine. And then they would turn their backs on you 6 months on. When you take a misstep, they're ready to crucify you as if they've forgotten the wound. And I think at that time, I took their condolences as truth. I took it as for permanence. I took it and I wore it and I dressed it, you know what I mean, in my living room and in my bedroom like string lights. I would hang up the things that people told me. And then so much of what they said would be contradicted with a cruelty that I didn't think they were capable of. And I vowed after that to never take any of their prayer or their truth or their goodness or their love or their celebration for permanence. I would not accept it. I would not read it. I don't read anything. So when my brother passed, I left the internet for months and months and months. I turned off my phone for 3 months and I left the country. And I only returned to my phone and erased all of my messages. So I didn't receive a single message that came in the immediate shock of my brother's passing, because I was so afraid that people's words were going to be wrapped up in that shock and not connected to my actual grief. Like, I remember, and this is the thing I don't recall very often, but leaving the masjid where I led the janazah prayer after I washed my brother's body. And I decided to go into the vehicle, into the hearse that was driving my brother to the burial place. And these 2 elders from the masjid who were driving us to the burial place, my final drive with my brother, they started having a casual conversation about some tedious issue between them, between their families. I remember looking at them and thinking and communicating and telling them, how could you have such conversation while I'm having my final ride here with my brother? I was like, how could you discuss such worldly matters while I am contemplating my brother's body being lowered into the ground, while I'm contemplating the conversations that the angels are having, and whether those conversations are good, whether he is, eager to go into the grave or whether he is fighting against it. I said, I don't know how it's possible for you to not even allow me the silence of this ride. And I think through the process of my brother's passing, I learned very quickly how little people care. And how even mourning is a performance, And that's why people hire mourners, so that people could, I never understood it, but there are wailers that attend funerals, and they do it so that people know how to grieve, because people don't know how to grieve. And what I realized is that those wailers that appear at a burial place, they exist online. There are those people that go on the stage of a social media platform and they perform a grieving, and people mimic that grieving. And the worst thing you could do is take that choir of grieving and think that it is going to fill the silence and the emptiness of that loss. It won't, and it never will. And so now, when I see maybe those same communities turning on me and vilifying me, wallah, it makes me laugh, because I think to myself, I wonder what good you were communicating of me just a year ago. I wonder what prayers for protection you were making for me before these prayers for protection became prayers for hellfire or prayers for disappearance. And all those prayers matter little to me now. I don't read any of them. For my brother's death, it becomes a new thing every day. And I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to carry all of it. But as of now, as of today, I remember his scent, and I remember just you know, the exact quality of his voice and what he feared most and what he wanted most and the exact seat in my living room that he would take and the friends that he loved deeply and the dreams that he chose to bury and the ones that were planted as a result. All of it I remember, all of it I think about. And every single time I go to the gym or I take a run or I am, you know, hyperventilating, I don't have air in my lungs, or I feel someone's tears coming on, I remember him and I think of his last breaths and I think of what he wanted to be and how he wanted to stay and how he wanted to stay more than I did. That's the truth, you know. There's a philosopher that talks about the different kinds of suicide, you know, that there's like a egoistic suicide and there's an altruistic suicide. And I love the way that we can compartmentalize these deaths that happen and these deaths that we're calling on ourselves. But I always seen the world outside of the technicolor that my brother seen it in. Mm-hmm. My brother wanted it more than I did. And so it's difficult for me to be in the world sometimes, considering how much he wanted it and how little I did. And I guess that's why I see the world in full, because he did. And I want to see it more and I want to be in it more because of it. And wallahi, when I came out of my isolation, you know, my brother passed on my birthday, right? July, end of July. For 3 months, I was isolated. SubhanAllah. When I re-emerged, it was October 2023. And a few weeks would pass and then, you know, this genocide took such a, you know, manic hold on my life and the lives of the people around me. But I thought to myself, I'm so wounded. I can't engage. I've done so much work for Philistine. I've been to Philistine. I've spearheaded so many efforts for the region and for the people of Gaza from childhood. And I thought to myself, I need to take this time for myself. I need to take this time to understand my brother's death. And then in Sudan, you know, the war that was, of course, always going on, it also reached a manic height. And the largest displacement crisis in the world. And I thought to myself, well, what's the reason that the moment that I re-emerged, the worlds that I know are on fire? Mm-hmm. And I chose silence again. I said, no. I said, people don't understand the level of torture that I've experienced, you know, in the last few months. And then I seen a video of a young Ghazian boy. And they asked him what his dream was. And he said his dream was to see his brother again. And when I seen that, I said, okay, I understand. I may have words that could fit in the exact shape of this boy's suffering. And because I have those words and because I understand the shape of this grief, I have to engage with him. So I decided I'd do like a benefit concert. And so I gathered a lot of artists that I know, and we did that in New York, top of January. And I guess my brother's death just encouraged me to engage and lean in a way that I never did before. Because there was a pain that I knew that tethered me to the pain of these children, I just knew it. I knew it intimately. And I had to appear because of it. So I think, alhamdulillah, my brother's death, so much good has happened because of my brother's passing. And in that way, his death is not in vain. And every day I make sure it's not. And every day I try to make good of his passing. Yeah.
I also know, Mustafa, you lost many friends. I have some of their names. Ano, Ali, Javante, Santana, and more. So you have, at a young age, you have a deep relationship with grief. If grief was a person, how would you describe that?
Trying to personify grief. For me, I think if grief was a person, I think for each person experiencing grief, if grief was a person for them, it would be as it is for me. And for me, I believe that grief would be a double of my own body. That's how I would describe grief. I think grief is you watching yourself, but having no control over the self that exists before you. That each day and each breath and each year that passes, you look at yourself and you look entirely different. And there are some years where you're completely silent. And there are some years where your eyes are missing and you see this body double walking around, unable to see around themselves. And there are some years where your mouth is missing and you can't speak at all. And you have to carry that person. You have to carry yourself into a new place. And there's nothing that you could do to correct it, There's nothing that you could do to reshape it. And there's nothing you could do to feed it, And that's how I would describe it, because I think every single year that passes, the grief transforms you, There is a life before my brother's passing, and there's a life after it. There's a life before the first friend that I lost, and there's a life after it. And so sometimes I feel like I am watching myself, but I'm without a limb, or like without speech, or without a charisma, or without light. And sometimes I'm weeping for an entire year, but I have to move through my day. And people are watching me, but they're unable to see that there is kind of like a body before me that is acting and operating in a way that completely contends with who I'm choosing to be in the room. I think that's what it is, because grief isn't one thing, but it is so much of what you know of yourself. It's hard. I don't know. I really wouldn't know how to describe grief as like a person, because I've seen it become so much. It's hard. It's
a weird question.
It's weird. It's very weird.
But I like this topic a lot, Mustafa, because I realized how big of a topic grief is, and it's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
It's a very unique experience, but people who have gone through it, they need to hear another person that's gone through it. They might relate to a speck of it at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I talk about it, you know. I think I talk about grief because I just know how difficult it was for me to understand it. You know, how difficult it was for me to have conversations around it. So many people don't understand, you know. You could have, you know, such an eclectic, full, dynamic group of friends, and none of them could show up accurately for you, no matter how much they want to. And sometimes all it takes is a conversation with the right person, or the listening of the right song, or, you know, just even the right video, you know, where someone communicates something and you're able to hold on to that and contextualize your mourning, you know.
And I realize sometimes it's a lot of people just need presence.
Yeah.
They don't need somebody to advise them or
100%.
tell them that they feel.
Yeah.
You don't need to act like you get the guys. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just be around me.
1,000%. It's funny because I have friends that really all they need is presence. And then sometimes for me, I'm like, I need to talk about it. I need to be specific. I want to talk. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to talk about the death. My friend was like, I don't like talking about I have a friend who lost his brother. He said, I don't like talking about my brother. I want to talk about the death because the death has informed me. The death is a part of who I am. So I want to talk about the death as much as possible because the death has now become an intrinsic part of my character. But for me, I'm like, no, the death doesn't inform me. The death is not who I am. I want to talk about my brother because that is the person that is missing and that is the person that I want to preserve. I want people to ask me questions about my brother and about his goodness and about his generosity and about the way that he walked into a room and the effect that he had on the room that he walked into. I'm like, that to me is the best use of my time. I don't want to talk about the death because no one is going to understand the death. And then someone else will be like, no, but like, of course they're not going to understand the death, but I want them to understand the death because if they understand the death, they'll understand me better as a result. And so it's funny how, like, you know, that is the thing about grief, is that it appears differently for so many people. I think I know how to answer the question about if grief was a person. I don't think grief is a person, you know, not at all. When I think about grief, I really, really see grief as an animal, you know, that is true, because I don't want to ever, you know, manipulate anyone into believing that that their grief will speak back to them. So it can't be another person because the grief doesn't talk back. And so when I think about my grief, I think so much about an animal, you know. I think that sometimes the grief to me feels like a wolf, you know, or it even feels like a bear, or feels like a lion. Like, but let's just say the grief is a wolf. You have to feed it. That's the thing about the grief, you know. And sometimes, you know, you wake and the wolf is hungry. It's famished and it needs you to feed it. And you're going to the ends of the earth to find food for this wolf because you see how emptied of you know, energy it is. And then by the end of the day, you've spent all of your time and all of your love and all of your effort feeding this wolf just for it to rest, just for you to be able to leave it in a room and tiptoe out of that room without it waking up, you know? Consider that the pain of grief, that sometimes if you're lucky, you can tiptoe out of the room without the grief coming to you, but eventually the grief will walk out of that room and will come knocking on your door again. And then there are some days where the wolf is just howling and howling and howling, and you cannot for the life of you hear what anybody has to say, you know? Everything is being coupled with this howling. And if someone speaks softly to you, this howling is robbing all of that person's speech. And you can't direct anybody to that howling because only you can hear it. because it's your grief, because it's this wolf. And if you point at it, it's a useless, effort to point at it because everyone else can't see it. Only you can see it, And then there are days where the food you have, the wolf won't eat, There are days where no matter what you bring that wolf, it won't eat the food. And so it remains hungry. And you have to watch it in its hunger, and you have to watch it responding to that hunger. No matter what tools you bring to it, no matter what food you bring to it, no matter what water you bring to it, it's as if the wolf would rather be on the brink of dying than to eat and drink from your hand. But what you know is that the wolf will never die. The wolf will never completely die. And you know that. It'll just remain on the brink of that suffering. And then it'll return to you wanting something else. And every single day that you wake, that animal wants something else and becomes something else. And sometimes you're in harmony with it. Sometimes if you're lucky, you walk outside with this wolf and this wolf is engaging with you in the way that you would never have imagined. Sometimes it's in every room imaginable. It's in every single dream, so much so that you can't even notice it. You don't even notice its presence. It has such a calm, and it's so collected, and it's so invisible that it's almost not there. And then you see it walking alongside you when you're going back home, and you think to yourself, I could work with this grief. I could see it, and I could watch how it deepens everything that I do. It deepens my work. It deepens my speech. It deepens my character. It deepens my connection to the people that I love. You look at that wolf, and that wolf reminds you to lean in, to go closer, to hold the people that you love, and to squeeze them harder. You see the wolf, over the shoulder of the person that you're holding. And you hold them just a little while longer because you see that wolf over the shoulder of the person that you love. And then that wolf walks home with you, and you think to yourself, is this wolf going to disappear? Is this wolf going to grow older? But you realize that the wolf's age is not linear, and it doesn't grow in the way that people grow, and it doesn't grow in the way that wolves grow. Sometimes you look at the wolf, and the wolf's a child again, and the wolf is just crying and crying and crying, and it forgot all of the wisdom that it learned through the years, and you have to teach it over and over and over again. And if I think about grief, that is the way that grief appears in my life, and that's how it has appeared through the years.
Would we say, Mustafa, that all of the deaths have wolves that you've experienced, and that the wolves would never ever disappear? Because I'm sure some people listening are thinking, so maybe one day the wolf will leave because I'm over my grief. Are you saying that it never really leaves, but maybe it becomes more acquainted and more tamed?
No, there is no leaving. There is no leaving. If you are fortunate, then you have nurtured your relationship with this wolf to the point where it could depart for a period of time, but it will return. And everyone in your life has to be aware of the presence of this said wolf. And you could keep it from an individual, but there's going to come a time where you're in the bedroom or you're in a living room, and someone will sit there and look in the corner of a room and see the wolf and think, well, what on earth have you been hiding from me this entire time? And it's never the same wolf. Each death has its own wolf, because each person occupies a different space in the world, and the way that space is filled requires a different animal.
Bro, like, the way you're bouncing ideas in your head,
it's the wolf. He helped me out. I got a few with me right now. Yeah. I've seen people personify grief in that way. I have a friend, His name is Max Porter. When I was leaving and I isolated for a month in Berlin, I remember I was given a book by a friend of mine. He's an artist. He's a great artist from London. And I forgot he gave me this book. And I remember when I was packing my bags and I was leaving, my sister was weeping. And I seen the book. And it was Grief is the Thing with Feathers. And I took that book with me and I read it over and over again. And the way that Max Porter writes about grief is he personifies grief as like a crow. And the crow is funny, and the crow has conversations, and the crow engages. And it was funny that, like, you know, every single time I had a conversation with a novel or with a poem about grief, everyone wrote about it differently. And everyone had this really deliberate way of describing it. And I thought to myself, I just have to be brave in my description of my grief. And so today, this is what I choose, and I believe it. And who knows what it becomes a year from now.
You definitely should write books too, by the way. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you that.
Well, man, it's a large feat. One day, maybe.
Have you forgiven these killers?
No. No. It's not for me to forgive. I believe in forgiveness, you know. But I don't like that forgiveness is a stipulation for Black excellence or Muslim excellence. I don't like when individuals like myself are celebrated for forgiving their oppressors. I don't like that. And I don't like that forgiving my killer could potentially absolve him of responsibility. That forgiving my brother's killer absolves him of responsibility, absolves the system that made it possible of responsibility. It absolves the policing system, their responsibility. And I need to hold them all accountable, and I don't forgive any of them. And I won't forgive them until justice is made, because justice is my right. Because I think being a Black Muslim from an inner city community that has had to fight against the odds, that the least that I deserve is justice. And, you know, polite society is too quick to celebrate people like me who forgive the systems that have wronged them. When I think about Palestinians who have lost their entire families and stand before cameras and choose to forgive the killer, I don't like when videos like that are celebrated and that are, you know, that we immerse ourselves in it because it's the way that we dismiss our own accountability to these people and to their suffering. That if they are forgiving the killers, then what are we to do? I think that there should be a celebration of the people that choose not to forgive, that choose to hold the states, these imperial states, you know, these colonial states, the people that choose to hold all of those systems accountable for the deaths of their families. We need to encourage those people. We need to protect the judgment and the rage that they have been afforded in this life. because they have a stake in that, you know.
Mm.
They have a right to that. They have a right to that rage, and they have a right to that accountability, and no one can take that away from them, and no one can take that away from me. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's an actor, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you forgive your brother's killer?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Man, you should, bro." He's like, "You know, it'll make you feel better, and like you'll be able to remove that weight from your body." I said, "You don't know the weight. You don't understand the weight. You're not carrying the weight." I said, "I know that you have acted in films where you have held on to this weight. You've performed this weight, but the performance of this weight and the actual weight are different. That there is no forgiveness that removes it from my body. I carry it forever, you know. So for as long as this person walks the earth and is not being held to the hell that he built into the center of my family, then I cannot rest, you know, and I cannot forgive, and I cannot let go, and the ache will not disappear. And that is a thing that whatever animal my grief has, it's like it is filled with that.
Yeah.
And I can still understand and know that forgiveness is still the highest form of being. It really is. I believe that in my heart. Without a doubt, I do believe that true forgiveness, I know that because I believe in all of the pillars of my faith. And Islamically, that is what we believe, you know, that, you know, to forgive is the way into paradise. And I haven't reached that. I haven't reached that. And I don't know if I will reach it. And where I'm at now is not a place I'm going to part from, I don't think.
Zim, Mustafa. If you had the chance to be reborn, would you choose your life again?
The right answer is yes, right?
There's no right answer, I think. You know,
No.
some people answer it actually no, and some I've heard the no, and they were just trying to be honest. Of course, the easy answer, if you want the given or default, people would say yes.
No, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. If I had the chance to be reborn again as myself, I would choose myself. I would choose myself. I would choose myself every time. I would. I think that because, you know, I always think that the people that I choose in my life, they're not a result of, it's not the result of convenience, you know. I don't choose company because it's the only company that I have access to. I do think that community is our responsibility. And so I will go wherever I need to go to find the community that is necessary for my sustenance. Because it's my lifeline. Community is my lifeline. And I remember sitting among my friends, and my friends were saying, "Man, I wish this and I wish that." And I'm like, bro, the company that we have now, the friend group that we have, I'm like, this is the only friend group that I want. This is the one that we have cultivated and that we have prayed for. And I do think so much of my life is the result of answered supplications, you know? And for that reason, I don't think I would be asked to be reborn in a different life, because this is the life that I asked for.
If I had an envelope that had your date of death, would you open it?
Absolutely.
Why?
I need to know when I'm dying. I need to know. I think it's because I believe in having a swan song. One thing, the prayer that I always make, this is actually the most consistent dua that I make. There are 2 du'as I make all the time. More than any other dua. A prayer I make more than any other prayer. 2 prayers. I ask for qalb al-salim, to have a kind heart, to have a good heart. And ask for husn al-khatima, to have a happy ending, a good ending. And it's how you finish. You know what I mean? And I want to finish well. And if I knew the date of my death, then I could construct an ending that is good for me.
Inshallah عندك حسن الخاتمة.
Inshallah. I'll be praying for it tomorrow like I prayed for it yesterday.
I had a follow-up also. And, for a human that goes through so much emotional turmoil and like drainage, do you become numb? Are you numb now?
The numbing is like a pendulum, and so it oscillates from one extremity to the other. And so sometimes I feel completely numb, and then it'll swing to such an unmanageable empathy that I can't be in a room without holding what everybody's feeling at once. And it's so funny. It's either one or the other. It's either I'm like, I don't care about what anybody got going on. I don't care about what anybody is saying. I don't care about what anybody is doing. Or I'm like, I cannot leave this room without carrying, the weight that each person was tussling with in the conversation that I had. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. When my brother passed, I remember I cared about nothing. I remember thinking I'd walk into a room. I was like, I remember when I was washing my brother's body, my cousin was in front of me and he was about to start crying. I said, Wallahi, if I see a tear fall from your eye, I said, you will leave this room. I said, if I even see tears fill your eyes, I said, you will leave this room. I said, I don't have space for that. And then he nodded his head, and I seen the tears go back in his body. And in that period, I had no consideration for what anybody was feeling. And I remember 3 days after my brother's passing, I was talking to my friend Lemise, who lost her older brother when she was 15 and she was 13 and he was 18, I believe. And he was a close friend of mine. His name was Ali. And she looked at me and she asked me about something. And I said, I don't care. I cared so little about it that I don't even remember what she asked me about. And she chuckled and she said, oh. She's like, you don't care about anything. I said, I don't care about anything. She said, oh yeah, I remember that feeling. She said, hold on to it. It doesn't last long. And wallahi, she was right. Because after 2 months of walking through the community and being in places that I wasn't supposed to be and wreaking havoc and not speaking to anyone and looking at the world and holding it in my hand in all of its gray and not having a connection to it, it all started to return to me. And then when it started to return to me, it's like, that power was being taken from me. And so there are instances where I feel that numbing return. And sometimes I could stretch my arms out into that happy place. I could feel the moon staring down at me. And I can feel the cold, spreading itself through the ground beneath me. And I can exhale and untie myself from all that I declared important to me. And it feels good for that moment. And then the numbing disappears again, and the whole world is back in my lap, and I have to do CPR on all that I love all at once. It's a funny thing, but I think that numbing is important. It's important. Incoherence is important. It's like, we negate the mind's need for inattention.
صح.
To just rest, to coast, to be incoherent.
To heal.
To heal. It's so important, because if I think about my own community, the way that we've processed grief is through comedy, the way that we understand it, the way that we make do with it is by letting it become whatever it needs to become. I think that lightness is really, really important. And I try to hold on to every tool possible, because you need every tool if you're going to survive it. You need every tool.
So, yeah. And what tool works today can not work tomorrow, and then you need the other tool.
Exactly.
I always used to think also how, because, when you go to Arab or Islamic funerals, it's that first 3 days, and a lot of people come, and 90% of them don't even care. They're just there for the formality.
Of course.
And I had a problem with that idea. But then I see also the wisdom of that idea. It's like a straightforward distraction. Like it's there to distract you from being alone. Because if you sit in your room alone the first 3 days, I don't think that's a good thing to do.
No, Allah, it's not good.
Like it's very dark. And
for sure. But what I also realized though is I'm like, I wish I didn't do so much in those days. The reason is this.
Not this or this.
Because after my brother's passing, everything I did in the days following, every meal that I ate, every room that I entered, are rooms that are damaged forever. Are meals that I cannot return to. And it's funny because I'm the kind of person that never returns to a room once a calamity has overtaken that room. I just don't want to return to it. And my friend said, no, if the room is damaged, you have to go back to that room and rewrite it. And I said, I am no match for the level of damage that room carries. I'm like, there is no memory good enough that can take on that one. That's what I believe, And luckily, it wasn't like a really good meal I was eating in those 3 days, or that would be unfortunate. Like, imagine it was, imagine it was like a Pomodoro. Could never eat a Pomodoro again.
You said that Muhammad, what's the name of your brother?
Muhammad.
Muhammad passed away on your birthday or close to your birthday?
He passed away on the 25th of July.
Yeah.
And I flew back the 26th. I washed his body on my birthday. So on the 28th of July was my birthday, and it was a Friday. So, that's when we did the ghusl, that's when I prayed on him, and that's when we lowered his body into the ground.
But does it affect your birthdays now? Like, do you have a good feeling in your birthday?
Horrible.
Oh, I don't like your birthday.
No, it's the worst day. It's the worst day to the point where now I am, I don't like the hybrid messages that I receive on my birthday. And so this year I decided to change my birthday.
I was just thinking about that.
I did, and I celebrated it on September 8th.
Oh, why?
I was sitting with my friends. We were in Spain. Dua, bro. Shout out to Dua Lipa and Callum Turner. We were having a little dinner. And I told Dua, I said, yeah, I want to change my birthday. She's like, okay, great. She's like, well, let's change it. She's like, let's choose it. Because she was like, I said, I don't want any gifts on my day. I refuse to let anyone celebrate me on the actual day. She's like, let's change it. So she's like, when do you want to be born? I said, I'm thinking the fall. I said, I feel like I am a fall baby. You know what I mean? I said in that way, first I said in earlier days, she's like, no, you don't want to turn the new age earlier. She's like, you don't want to grow older quicker. She's like, choose a later day so you have a few more months.
Fair.
I said, you know what? That is good logic. So I told her, I said, I want to be born in the fall. And so Callum's like, oh, that's great. He's like, where in the fall? I said, I feel like I'm in October. I'm like, I love October. There's something really transient about that month, and I think I should be born in that month. And she said, okay, great. Like, what day? And then I said, well, what's your favorite number? I said, 7. I was like, 7 is like an infinite number, you know? I'm like, great, October 7th. And she's like, oh, no, you can't choose October 7th. I was like, yeah, subhanAllah, of course I can't choose October 7th. It's a horrible day. So then I was like, okay, cool. Let's not do October 7th. I said, let's do September 7th. Then I said, then I got paranoid that people are going to think I went from October 7th to September 7th. So then I said, okay, what number is like infinity? Is 8, you know? So then that's how I landed on September 8th. Okay. And so I had a gathering on September 8th.
Okay.
A few of my friends came together and we were in New York, and, you know, Rami was there and a few of our friends, and they brought me a little cake and like a homemade fig bar and some flowers. And it was actually amazing. I thought to myself, wow, that's all it takes.
So,
it's just a decision.
And it's a day.
It's a day.
It's any day.
It's any day.
You celebrate life every day. We're alive, technically. And the funny thing, you know, I was with a lot of the Somali community when I was in Boston.
Yeah.
90% of them, their birthday was January 1st because it was the default.
Yeah, my dad.
And a lot of them didn't ever know their actual birthday.
No, none of them do. My parents don't know about their actual birthday either.
Yeah.
My dad thinks he, of course, Yani, my dad loves to be different. And so he chose his day to be July 1st because he found out that Canada Day was July 1st. And he said, if they think I was born on July 1st, they're going to let me into the country because they're saying this guy's a blessed man. He's born on Canada Day.
Good logic.
Yeah. So my dad was actually born on Canada Day. He doesn't know when he was born.
Let's do this card game where you mix. I'm going to give you another one for you and your friends. So mix it. We'll just choose one for you randomly by fate.
Cool.
Let's see.
Wait, so it's like, I'm confused.
It's a card game that I have.
So I just pick a card?
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see which one turns up.
All right. I'll just pick from the middle.
Let's see. And I'll ask you.
Bismillah.
No, we answered this one. What does love mean to you? Next one. Okay. So I'll ask you, this is the method of answering. Okay? What is something that makes you feel powerful? You can throw the die. Be honest. What makes you feel powerful?
Okay, what makes you feel powerful? Oh, damn, there was so much possibility in there. And that's what I picked. What makes you feel powerful? A lot of things make me feel powerful. What makes me feel powerful? What makes you feel powerful, Mustafa? You know what makes me feel powerful? My name makes me feel powerful.
Really?
Mustafa, Tabar, the chosen one. Of course, I'm named after Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but I carry that name with such a pride, that whatever I am chosen for anything, I remember who I represent, the faith that I represent, the ummah that I represent, the people that I represent. I represent the people that feel ousted by their communities, I used to be in the mosque or in the community center or performing poetry at an assembly, and always I felt ousted, always I felt alien to what was happening around me. And if the Muslims and the kids in the hood and Sudanese kids that feel similarly can see in me, you know what I mean, in the alien nature that I've approached the world, if they could feel not alien, but chosen as a result of seeing me being chosen for something, then that to me is a power that nothing else can match. When someone, chooses to see this kind of eerie, singular quality about them as a power, and if I can help them identify that through the abstract nature of what I choose to do, then I have truly fulfilled on the terms that I set for myself as an artist, as a person, as a Muslim, as a believer.
Who's the most important person in your life today?
The most important person in my life today. It's a really interesting question. Who's yours?
We can flip it.
Oh, come on. I've never asked you a question this entire time. I'm just curious.
I think my mother.
Your mother.
I would say. I think the fact that she's been such an important character in building her sons and starting with me, and her life views are my foundation and infrastructure. And the fact that I know that her time is limited. So, God give her a healthy, long life, but in a normal default timeline, she's going to go. And knowing that beauty is going to go, it's heart-wrenching. So you want to make the most of it. Yeah.
For sure.
And you?
I think the most important relationship for me today is my relationship with my little brother. I think I'm learning so much about sacrifice through him. He's silent, especially when it comes to emotional expression. He doesn't speak very often. And that is my primary language of love, is repetition. It's speech. It's language. It's an abundance of language. And because that is not the first place he draws towards to, express his love or to give evidence of his love, I have to reform my way of loving. And everything that I give to him and every path I make possible for him helps me see myself clearer and helps me forgive my brother. And every time I'm able to do for him what my older brother wasn't able to do for me when he was alive and when he was present, it makes me have a greater mercy on my brother. It makes me pray for him. It makes me remember him. And right now, knowing that I could be an older brother and knowing that I could fulfill that is such an honorable task. And it's a task that I wouldn't trade for the entire world.
If you were in a room, Mustafa, with everyone that you've lost, who's the first one you'd look for?
I can't say my brother because I don't know what I would say to him right now. I don't know if I'm prepared to draw towards him. But I think that I would. My grandmother, she died quite early. My father's mother. And she died on the 27th night of Ramadan on a drive from Mecca to Medina. A car accident. And her and a few of my other family members passed. And my father had and still has this undying commitment to her. And I've never met her. And he doesn't speak about her. And if I could be in a room with everyone that we lost, I think she'd be the first person I would draw towards. And I would ask her how to speak to my father. Because I think she's the only one who knows how to enter his heart. And I don't think I ever have. Properly, efficiently. No.
Does it bother you that you can't communicate with your father that way?
It bothers me, but, he's been hardened by his lived experience. Even his father died suddenly. We have a bridge, and the bridge is prayer. He prays for me, and I pray for him, and we pray alongside each other. And this forest between us, I'd like to believe that it's closed when we're feet to feet and shoulder to shoulder. I'd like to believe that. But beyond that, I don't know if there is an emotional thread that we have to. Of course, there is love. And of course, that love could, take up the corners of every room for all time. But is that love communicated effectively? I don't believe that it is, And do I understand my father? I don't believe that I do. I don't think that love requires understanding. But I think it requires mercy. And so, my relationship with my father is, as all my relationships are, but this one more so than most, is sustained by that continued mercy.
You think he'd watch this interview?
My father doesn't watch much of anything besides the few shiyukh he really, really loves, and whatever comes through the whirlwind of Arab WhatsApp, And, maybe this will be miraculously cut up and sent through the Sudani chain of WhatsApp messages and will reach my father's footsteps. But I really love how oblivious my parents are to everything that I do.
Okay, let's say, Mustafa, somebody does volunteer and cut up this part. What would you like your dad to hear from his son, Mustafa? Your dad, Allah yahfadah, is alive today. You're alive today. What is important that he knows that his son thinks of him?
Oh man, there's so much, But my father runs one of the most populated mosques in Toronto. Over 1,000 people have been coming to attend his Friday prayer since 2010, probably. And he's expanded and has expanded it. And the first congregation was in our living room. And so when I think about my father, I think about a man who was able to take this worship for his Lord from the place where his family gathers to a place where all families could gather. And that says so much about who he is as a person, that the living room and that our prayer rooms and our bedrooms weren't ours alone. That when his friend's wife passed away while giving birth, and while the daughter too passed away eventually, he let his friend travel the world to make money for his surviving children while those kids lived in our small home for 3 years. And he told me that they were family. And I believed that, and I still believe that now. That nothing that I had was mine alone, and nothing my Father has is his alone. And for that reason, I am the way that I am. And for that reason, when I utter a word, when I write a word, I've never in my life believed that word was mine. I've never in my life believed that sentence was mine alone. I don't believe in authorship. Just like my Father never believed in ownership. Just like my Father never believed that there was a fixed place for worship. Just like my Father never denied anyone entry into the mosque. You know, that is the kind of person that my Father is. And if anyone wants to know anything about my Father, and if there's one thing that I want my Father to know, that I know of him, that I will repeat long after he passes, is that in my Father's company, everybody belongs. In my Father's company, everyone is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one can make judgment of a person without knowing what their belief is going to be in their final breath. And no one knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my Father has had quite the way with building a world where other people see that in themselves as well. And he held on to nothing. He holds on to nothing. And I'd like to believe that I don't hold on to much as well. When my Father spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the burial place for his son, and as I and my little brother stood next to him, he didn't consult anyone. He didn't address anyone but his Lord. And I'll never forget what he said. He looked, and there is no one that was present that could say that he was uttering this so that he can move into it. Everyone that was there would know that everything that he said because he believed it in that moment, and he still believes it now. And he said, "Oh Allah," I'm translating it here, but he said, "Oh Allah," he said, "you have given me 6 children, and you have taken one of my children away. And I am pleased with that taking. And I accept that you have taken my son from me. And take whatever you need to take from me until you are satisfied with me. And cool my son's body. But whatever decision you make, oh Allah, I accept that decision. And I am not against you for the decision that you have made. And I have prayed against this. And this is the way that you have answered this prayer. And I accept every answer of every prayer." And I realized that my Father, his entire life was in a practice of this. And his practice was not useless, because he is a great example of how to grieve effectively. I watch him, and I watch his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I see how true it is, you know, and how much he truly accepts what God has taken from him.
Mm.
And in that prayer, I found a way to re-enter the world. Through my Father's prayer, between my Father's hands, I re-entered the world again. And when I think of it, I find a way back into the world, and I find a way back into my supplication. And just like he doesn't feel that he owns the living room, or that he owns a conversation or a prayer or a pulpit or any of his children or any of his clothing, it's the way that I think he's going to be able to leave this earth without a panic never thought of fear of any of those things not coming with him.
When was the last time you cried?
I don't cry a lot.
I know.
I don't cry a lot because I'm a compound crier. I'm a compound crier, so I wait for multiple events that would result in tears to all come together, and then all it takes is just, just like a simple word to trigger its release. So probably the last time that I cried was, actually, no, it was not too long ago. It was in Wisconsin 7 months ago.
Why?
I was with a friend, an artist that I really love, and he knows how to, open his arms in such a way to me that I can't escape anything that I'm feeling. And whatever I communicate to him makes him weep. And I think that weeping makes it difficult for me to avoid the tears myself. When I perform, I think a lot of people come carrying a lot of their grief. And because I'm not performing for tens of thousands of people, I'm performing for a few thousand people. And so I have to turn off all the house lights, because if I see someone crying, it'll take me back to periods where I am a shell of a man, and then I no longer have the power to carry me through the song. So I don't have it in me to see the audience that I'm performing for. And so I think the tears of other people in relation to what I'm feeling, they become the portal. And I'm trying to avoid that portal at all times.
If, Mustafa, I could take your heart out and place it in front of you, what would Mustafa's heart tell Mustafa?
My heart would say, you're tripping, bro. You're tripping. You need to figure this out immediately. I am at a loss for direction. I think that's what my heart would say.
You feel like that in your life now?
I feel my heart feels like that. I think so. I think
it's conflicted.
Definitely. When my heart builds a memory, the moment that something begins to grow, I, with as carefully as possible, try to extract it and give it a home on a page, or give it a home as a song, or give it a home in someone else's body. And in that way, it lives somewhere else, and I cannot forget it. That's the way that the heart's memory is infinite to me, is because I'm able to take it and build borders around what my heart produces. And I think if my heart was outside of my body and it wanted to speak to me, it would ask me where I was storing all that memory. And it would ask me to take it to where those memories are, to where all those matters of the heart are resting, and where they're all being protected. Because I think my heart would want to see how I'm preserving it.
Before I ask the last question, you said at the beginning of the interview, I wasn't meant to be here because of so many near misses, if we are supposed to call them near misses, or close calls. And you said you were also at gunpoint at some point. I just wanted to say something that I think you are meant to be here. And I want you to flourish in knowing that it's all by design, and whichever way you want to believe it, whichever faith application, you're meant to stay. It was never, I wasn't meant to be here. It is, I'm meant to be here maybe I don't understand why, but I'm meant to be here and I'm figuring it out. So is it the word bask or bask?
Bask.
So I want you to bask in that.
Oh, bask in it.
Yeah.
Frolic.
Enjoy that light.
Yeah.
It's tough. There's an imposter syndrome to it. There's a confusion to it. But you can do so much by not even trying to do so much. Just by being who you are. Because you're a special man.
Thanks, Broski.
My last question.
Ready.
Mustafa in one word.
Mustafa in one word? Mustafa in one word. Contradiction.
Contradiction. Does that connect with your answer about the conflicting heart?
Yeah. I think so. I think I like it. I like being... I like contradicting myself. I believe in... Obviously, this is cliche at this point, but I do believe that we all contain multitudes, and I do believe that we're not accurately depicting those contradictions enough. The reality is I spoke a lot about mercy in this interview, you know, and the only reason that all of our relationships require continued forgiveness is because, you know, we are always contradicting ourselves. We are always contradicting our truths. We are always contradicting our joys and our loves and our want to be here and our beauties and, you know, and our morals and our ethics. They're always being contradicted. And I think if I was seen as a contradiction, then people would see the good of me and the bad of me, and they'd be like, well, how could the good and the bad and the confusing all exist in this one body? And of course it does. Because that's what makes me who I am, you know? That's why I wear bulletproof vests all the time. This is a bulletproof vest. I wore a bulletproof vest. The first time I ever wore one was where Massey Hall. I was playing Massey Hall. It was one of my favorite venues in the world. It was my first headlining show. And I remember they said, you know, this is the police called the venue and they said, this is a safety risk to the community. You need to shut down the show. So 3 days before the show, after thousands of people bought tickets, they said, we may have to shut down the show because they're saying it's a safety risk. And I said, a risk to which community, you know? Because they don't care about the safety of my community. Because if I did it in my own community, there would be no safety risk. So which community is it a safety risk to? Of course, it's not mine. And they said, no. You know, you are at risk. I said, oh, am I at risk? So I put on a bulletproof vest that day over my thobe. And I thought to myself, well, this is what I should wear. And I always think like, you know, so much of what I am and who I am is under attack. Someone's always trying to take it from me. And I always think to myself, well, Yani, if you take this from me, who am I going to be? I could only be what I grew to become. You know, like I grew up in a Sudanese household and a Muslim household, and I grew up in a household with God, and I grew up in the hood. This is what I am. I coupled that with the things that I've read, and yani, this is how I've appeared. I can't appear any other way. And people are still trying to pull me out of the things that they see in me, that they see in themselves, because they hate to see themselves in a freedom that they've never had access to. And wallahi, I understand that. If you are, you know, shackled, if your identity has been shackled in a particular context, and then you see someone without any of those handcuffs, you know, without any of that kind of imprisonment, of course you're going to ridicule that person because you're going to think, how on earth is this person existing in this free form way when I've existed with this identity in a really rigid capacity? People hate to see themselves in a capacity that they could not hold themselves in. And I think when people see me, they see me as evidence of a freedom that they've never had access to.
You remind them of the shackles.
Exactly. And I think in that way they laugh at me or they're angered by me. And I always laugh because I go, guys, it's just songs. Wallahi, they're just music. One of my friends says, they're just music songs. That's what he calls it. I'm like, Yani, this is what's getting you frustrated? Little songs, small poems, a little jalabiya? Of course not. Of course not. It's that these songs may be a bridge to a memory that they don't want to relive. I have friends that don't speak to me anymore. And they haven't burned, you know, the bridge between us because I've done anything wrong. They've burned the bridge because I am connected to a memory that they don't want to relive. And I think sometimes when people listen to me or they watch me, I am connected to a memory or to a cultural identity that they don't want to ever have to reimagine or relive or understand differently. And so they reject it and they reject it and they reject it. And I love them for rejecting it. Truly. I love them for rejecting it. And so when I think of myself as a contradiction, I think, yeah. And those that accept me as that contradiction, inshallah, they're able to accept themselves as contradictions as well. And then my work is absolutely completed. So that's the word, truly. I'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man.